welcome to The Kit Locker, a podcast of Black Site Media. My name is Simon Roberts.
And my name is Jason Blackiston.
And we are coming through to the issue of protection from head to toe.
Oh, very good.
See what I did there?
It took you ages to rehearse that, didn't it?
2 weeks, and a team of script writers worked on that.
Okay. Unbelievable.
All right, shut up. Now, we are getting into this issue, as I say, of protection and, technical fibres and upgrades to existing technologies.
Yeah.
I thought I'd start, actually, at the bottom of the pile.
Oh, very good.
That doesn't kind of work as well, does it? With boots. So these are the earliest boots I know of being used. These are the famous Northern Ireland boots. These are very rare nowadays. You can't really pick them up very easily anymore, but this is a set which was in a really remarkable condition.
New old stock, I think, is the word.
That's it, new old stock indeed.
Barely worn, stiff as a board.
For old hands who wore the DMS boots, which were in the 70s, I guess, and around the time of the Falklands War, you'll notice they have the pattern on the sole, the Y-shaped pattern. Essentially, this was like an extended form of the DMS boot, which is a sort of ankle-length boot. It's a sort of pimply leather. This is a quite solid example, but from what I understood, the people who had Northern Ireland boots, which were sort of a particular issue item at the time, they weren't necessarily on for everybody, that they didn't necessarily last brilliantly. They're not your sort of modern kind of boot.
They don't look very comfortable, really, do they?
They're okay, but I mean, I don't wear them for long periods myself.
I mean, these are 40 years old, aren't they?
Well, yeah, this is it. There was a version of this called a cadet boot, which you might see around still in some shops. That has a welt over the toe, but otherwise they're pretty much indistinguishable from the Northern Ireland boot. These were things that were worn at the Iranian embassy siege. John McAleese famously said the soles of his boots were melting. And as I say, other people have said that they don't necessarily last a particularly long time. I've got another pair from the 1970s that was worn by a member of the Cheshires in Northern Ireland. And they are quite worn down smooth after a period of actual heavy use on the streets.
Yeah. Okay.
Going from there...
What have we got here then?
You go to about 1984, the British Army introduces the BCH, the Boots Combat High, which is, again, like a sort of urban patrol boot.
Yeah.
A little more kind of solid in a way. Thick, heavy soles, softer leather upper. But again, from users I've heard, they did sort of pinch quite badly at the top of the ankle at the back. So this is, again, a best guess for what might be worn in this sort of period. Some people may still have the Northern Ireland boots floating around in the early 80s.
Right.
And the standard British Army boot will become available as well. But I suspect the Special Air Service probably had a degree of latitude with boots that they could, perhaps do for private purchase.
Imagine they went up the millets or the camping shop.
Could be the case. I mean, there are reports of other kinds of softer climbing boots. There's a brand, Galibier boots, I think, that we used. Again, it's difficult to find information, and pictures are not always the clearest in terms of definition of the detail of a black leather boot.
Okay. So what have we got here then? Moving on. These look sort of more like high trainers almost.
Like a boxer's boot.
Yeah, similar, much lighter. They feel like you can move around.
Yeah.
The sole looks a lot grippier. They look more suited to the purpose of a counter-terrorism team.
That's right. These are the famous GSG9 boots. The Grenzschutzgruppe 9 boot from,
you swallow a German
impressed
dictionary.
With my German pronunciation.
Crikey.
The German, counter-terrorism unit that was in contact with Mel Parry of the Ops Research Wing of 22 SAS, and who, I assume, I don't know much about the history of these, developed or requested Adidas, depending on how you say it in Germany, to develop a lightweight tactical boot. And as you say, it's kind of very much a very soft leather upper.
It feels like you could wear these all day and they'd be comfortable.
And I have reports that they are quite comfortable to wear.
And I think if I was climbing a ladder or sort of generally moving around, even sort of on aircraft wings and things like this seam would give you a better...
Well, you would think so. There is this sort of knobbly grip that they have underneath. but these did, I think, only have a short time in
Right.
service with the SP team, because when I chatted to Mel about these boots, he reported the same thing. They were very comfortable, but they did encounter a problem when they were practicing assaults on aircraft entries.
Yeah.
Actually, he said when you had an aircraft where the wings were wet, these would just slide off.
Right. These didn't provide that level of grip.
Yeah, these were kind of changed at that point for other kinds of boots, which we'll see a bit later on. One of the things about these is they become a bit of a kind of collector's item. And I think because they kind of intersect with a sort of, fashion for retro trainers and boxing boots that people just might wear, in their everyday, wardrobe. But there is also a problem with these boots. There was a sort of technology around in the late 80s, early 90s of using polyurethanes in the soles of the boots. Now you can feel
they're sticky, aren't they?
Yeah. What happens is the polyurethane in soles undergoes a process called hydrolysis, and eventually this stickiness will just develop into sort of a tar-like crumbliness, and these soles on GSG9 boots will usually rot away. And this has always struck me because in the second-hand market, you go on eBay for GSG9 boots, and sometimes they'll have ridiculous prices on them. And I always want to say to people, just beware of the fact that if you want to pay £400 or something for a pair of,
how much
I've seen more. I've seen more for a pair of mint GSG9 boots in the box. Do be aware they won't last forever, and if in fact because of their age, they're probably starting to hydrolyze already.
Well, these feel like they're going hard on the bottom. It feels like that.
Yeah.
I mean, so how old are these particular boots?
So I mean, these will probably be round about. Let me see. We're talking early 90s really at this point. So we're talking 35 years or so. And that is what happens. I had a pair previously as sort of a slightly less good condition than these, but I did wake up one morning, look in the cupboard, and found that they turned into sort of slushy tar that went all over my nice carpet, and that was a bit annoying.
Unfortunate.
It was because I had
messed up the axminster.
I had to clean it up myself.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't get your man to do that.
No, unfortunately, no. He was off that weekend, and I had to do it myself. So yeah, that's the GSG9 boot. Looks very Gucci, as they would say, but is possibly somewhat impractical. And boot technology, moved on, pretty fast anyway.
So let's go to the top now. We've got two helmets there. One of them looks like a plastic skateboard helmet.
Yes.
Which sort of with the counter-terrorism teams.
Yeah.
Big into skateboarding?
Well, not really, as far as they may have been. I mean, they could be into sort of extreme sports, I suppose. I mean, maybe, I don't know, is skateboarding an extreme sport? This is a helmet by Pro-Tec, who make these kinds of helmets for people who are doing, whitewater rafting, kayaking,
I had something
skateboarding.
like this when I was in the early 80s when I was at school.
That's it, a bump helmet.
My mum used to make me wear it.
Really?
Don't go out the house without your helmet on.
I see. Yeah, okay. Well, that's the sort of thing you would see. I mean, if you all remember seeing the film Black Hawk Down about that particular operation in Mogadishu in the early 90s, you'll see the SEAL Team 6 members wearing bump helmets like this. Okay. And in reference pictures of this sort of period, in the kind of mid to later 80s, early 90s, teams will actually also wear a bump helmet. Now, obviously, one thing to say is it doesn't offer any ballistic protection as such, but it may be useful if you're jumping through windows. You don't want to bang your head on a frame.
Just for basic impact protection.
Yep. And as I say, you do see these in a few pictures, not some of the more publicly available ones. I have come across some images where you can see, a troop on rotation on the SP team wearing these as protection. But again, it's probably pretty short-lived. You do start to get actual ballistic protection coming in. So now this is an interesting one. This is...
it's got a passenger.
A passenger?
A spider.
Has it really? Has it really got a spider in it? Oh dear, yeah, that's probably something from my loft that I've
Perhaps it's come out of your wallet.
Yeah, see what you did there. Okay, this is an AC-100 helmet by Courtaulds Aerospace. Now, you see a lot of images, again, of SAS SP team role type people around in books, online, and sometimes in this period they're wearing this particular helmet. Unfortunately, I don't have any evidence from picture references that it was actually used operationally.
Okay.
But Courtaulds Aerospace do supply other helmets later on. This particular one, as you see here, it's got clips on the side for mounting a visor.
Okay. So would that be a ballistic visor, or
That's
just
right.
just a basic?
It would be a ballistic visor. I've got one with a ballistic visor. It's quite thick plexiglass type stuff. You don't really sort of see any references with the UK Special Forces wearing a visor. It's much more common. You see pictures of the French teams like GIGN, Groupe d'Intervention du Gendarmerie Nationale, which is GIGN.
Very good.
That's the French one. And RAID, I don't know what RAID stands for, it's their other, but they often seem to have a thing of wearing ballistic helmets with visors on. But this particular one, the AC100, as I say, you may see it in pictures. There was a couple of variants. One has a slightly more pronounced lip on the brow, but I don't have evidence of them actually being used. They are quite, really are quite heavy.
Heavy, yeah. There's a substantial feel to that.
Yeah. I mean, if we look at, say, more modern helmets, which we've got an array of more modern ones behind us, they're much lighter, much more user-friendly, I would say. This is quite a slab of a protective composite that you're carrying on your noggin, and it doesn't particularly fit well on the head. There's a sort of standard head harness inside, such as you'd find with a British Army Mark VI helmet around this time. But I've tried wearing them. They're very heavy and they're not very comfortable.
Okay.
They have accommodation for wearing the respirator with this, more recessed brow. Above and beyond that, as I say, I don't think there's much history on them.
Okay, so moving on from there. Yeah. Moving on from the helmet.
Right.
Seems like we have some fire-resistant undergarments.
Yes.
And some gloves.
Yeah. Well, why don't we start with gloves again? We've covered in a previous video that you have your various kinds of leather glove, RAF aircrew gloves, very fine. You can get close-fitting sizes for gloves, which will allow you to perform weapon manipulations relatively easily. You've got now technical fibers coming in.
Yeah. I mean, these are Nomex, knitted, so they're stretchy, unlike the woven material for the coveralls. Feel like double layer to allow a bit of extra protection and a slight air gap between the material. Stop that heat transfer. These are very comfortable gloves. Leather's inherently fire resistant as well, so there's no problem there. So they would be offer a lot of protection from flame. These are obviously an outer glove. They have the leather palms to provide a certain amount of grip. Dexterity. Those are a pair of gloves I'd quite happily wear. They're very comfortable. Looking here, we have another knitted Nomex. Again in the blue, because of the problems with dyeing. A lot of this stuff was blue. These they're very thin, single layer. Nomex probably worn underneath aircrew gloves, for instance, which would give a lot of protection. The leather for the dexterity, gripping things, and the Nomex underneath to stop that heat transfer. So that would provide a lot of protection. A lot of heat transfer.
Again, protection. I'm always wondering about the dexterity of weapon handling in gloves. It's not clear to me because I don't use weapons routinely. And to what degree it's important to have, finger,
I think
mobility.
It's a personal choice. I mean, it's some people get on with gloves, some people don't. Some people cut the fingers off. You have ring stitch fingers occasionally, so they cut the trigger finger off. It's all very personal. But that combined with the Nomex would give a lot of protection.
And I guess it's going to matter when you're in scenes where you're having scenarios where you're going into buildings. Maybe you have to climb through frames. There's broken glass.
Absolutely.
There's the possibility of obviously flame, fire.
There's a lot of hazards.
Hot objects.
There's a lot of hazards, and if you're moving fast, those hazards are amplified.
So I might not be so cavalier about gloves if I was in that situation. So accompanying that set of Nomex gloves we have there, we've also got some full body protection in the
some
form
undergarments.
of
Now, These again, knitted Nomex, to provide that layer below to stop heat transfer. These set of garments were actually owned by Mel Parry himself, weren't they?
Right.
That's his own personal garments that he gifted to Simon.
Yes.
So they have a historical significance.
Yeah.
Couple of little features there. They've got knitted cuffs on the sleeves and the neck. This is very important. Gives a nice tight fit.
Yeah.
Stops debris going down if you're down below and someone's doing a level 2 entry. They're up on a ladder, breaking a window, raking it out. You perhaps got glass coming down.
Yeah.
Combined with the hood on the coverall and the knitted cuffs on the later coverall would provide a level of protection for glass getting inside and down between your body armour, which would be a disaster. So this is something they found out, that they needed these knitted, knitted neckline, knitted cuffs to stop ingress of foreign objects.
And again, a reminder that these things don't give you complete invulnerability from fire as a threat.
Not fireproof,
but they'll certainly give you perhaps a level of operable comfort and optimized protection with weight.
Exactly.
For the kind of requirement that you have if you're operating with an assault suit over the top.
Yeah, and here we have the
long johns.
Undergarments, bottoms, long johns, elasticated waist, elasticated bottoms on the ankles, again to stop debris entry.
The label in there. Okay,
That's GD Specialist Supplies.
Yeah.
Now, they were an early company that supplied an awful lot of equipment to the team at Hereford, and they made a wide range of stuff, from undergarments, vests, all sorts. I mean, we've got a catalogue which we probably could take a photograph of and show you in the video.
They were kind of
one of the videos,
a sort of one-stop shop for the regiment to source what they didn't make. They would outsource.
That's right,
to other manufacturers and aggregate together in a sort of, your perfect shop for counter-terrorism.
Yeah, they supplied a lot of stuff overseas as well. They sent a lot of stuff to the SDU in Hong Kong. Lots of overseas units, Singapore, Malaysia, even Indonesia, I believe. So that company got around a bit.
Yes.
But later on, there was quite a few companies making these, mainly up in sort of Lancashire, Yorkshire, would make all these knitted garments. Used as well for commercial applications as well. So,
yes.
Oil rig workers, etc., etc.
Emergency services.
That needed this level of fireproof. I used to supply a lot of garments when I was making the fire-resistant Special Forces coveralls. We used to supply these garments as a part of an assault system.
Yes.
So, you find a lot of these. It's the same materials the balaclavas are made from.
Yep.
Just a couple more examples of gloves there.
Yes.
The Northern Ireland glove and a black set of aircrew glove, which we've covered in another video.
Yes. Yeah. I fancy the black more than the green. It coordinates better.
I like it.
That's my impression. Again, the Northern Ireland gloves, as I say, it's difficult to know. They were reported anecdotally in books, especially around the time of the Iranian embassy siege. There were a couple of books that came out. One called Siege, I think it was a Sunday Times book, and one called Hostage by Sim Harris and Chris Kramer, two of the hostages. And it would be a typical description that the SP team would be wearing Northern Ireland gloves. Again, I always just question how practical it is.
Could just be a catch-all term for
military gloves of that time. But there you go. That's a short video on protection, and we will see you next time. Remember to share this video with your friends,
and like and subscribe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.